Okay, so picture this. You're standing in the middle of the Arabian desert. The sun is absolutely brutal. Sand stretches in every direction as far as your eyes can see. And somewhere in that heat, on the horizon, there's this shimmering image, a city, a river, something beautiful and real. You walk toward it. You walk hard. For years, you keep walking. And just when you think you're finally about to touch it, it disappears. That's Desert Warrior. That's exactly what watching this movie feels like. And look, I want to love this film. I genuinely did. Because everything on paper, this should have been a masterpiece. A massive historical epic about the Arabian Peninsula. A $150 million budget. Ben Kingsley, Anthony Mackie, Sharlto Copley. Shot across breathtaking real-world desert locations. A story pulled from actual pre-Islamic Arabian history that most of the Western world has never even heard of. This had all the ingredients to be something special. Something that changes how people think about Middle Eastern cinema and Middle Eastern history. But somewhere between the idea and the execution, something went really, really wrong. So let's talk about it. Let's get into all of it. The ambition, the chaos, the performances, what works, what absolutely doesn't work, and most importantly, what this film could have been done. To understand Desert Warrior, you first have to understand what it represents, because this isn't just a movie. This is a statement. Saudi Arabia lifted its 35-year ban on cinemas in 2018. Think about that. An entire generation grew up in a country with no movie theaters. And when they came back, they didn't just want to screen movies. They wanted to make them. Big ones. World-class ones. Films that could sit alongside Hollywood blockbusters and demand to be taken seriously. Desert Warrior was supposed to be that film. The $150 million budget alone tells you everything about the ambition here. For context, that's more than what was spent on the original Top Gun, more than The Revenant, more than countless films that became cultural landmarks. Saudi film investors weren't dipping their toes in. They were cannonballing into the deep end. And thematically, the choice of story is genuinely inspired. The Battle of Dhi Qar, an actual historical event from around 600 AD, where Arabian tribes defeated a Persian imperial army. This is David versus Goliath in the desert. This is a story of identity, of resistance, of a people deciding that this is where we stand. It's cinematic gold waiting to be mined. The intention was right. The ambition was real. The passion was there. And that's actually what makes what happened next so frustrating to talk about. This film had a 4-year production delay. For years. And in the movie world, that is almost never a good sign. Now, delays happen. Films get delayed for all kinds of reasons. Creative differences, budget restructuring, casting changes, global pandemics. But 4 years is a story. For years means something fundamentally complicated happened behind the scenes. And whatever that something was, you can feel the effects of it in the final cut. Reports swirled about clashes between the international production team and local creative expectations. There were questions about the direction, about the tone, about who this film was actually being made for. Was it for Saudi audiences reclaiming their history? Was it for Western audiences being introduced to that history? Was it trying to be both? Because here's the brutal truth about trying to be everything at once. You often end up being nothing particularly well. When a production is this troubled, this stretched out, this pulled in multiple directions, the film almost always carries those scars on screen. And Desert Warrior does. You can see them in the editing. You can feel them in the pacing. There are moments where this movie genuinely breathes, and then moments where it feels like 3 different films stitched together by someone who couldn't quite decide which one they were making. So here's the story, without drowning you in exposition. At its heart, Desert Warrior follows a tribal leader, a man of conviction navigating a world on the edge of enormous change. The Persian Empire, one of the most powerful forces the ancient world had ever seen, is pushing outward. Arabian tribes are fractured, politically complicated, and dealing with their own internal conflicts. And our protagonist has to somehow unite people who don't particularly want to be united against a threat that seems genuinely impossible to overcome. It's a classic underdog epic. It's got political intrigue, personal betrayal, questions of loyalty and identity, and it builds, supposedly, toward one massive, cathartic battle sequence that should leave you cheering. The bones of this story are excellent. The setup has genuine tension. There are scenes in the first act that actually made me lean forward. The world feels lived in, the stakes feel real, and the central conflict between tribal independence and imperial expansion is surprisingly resonant. This kind of story has universal appeal. It doesn't matter where you're from. You feel something when you watch someone stand up and say, "We will not be moved." But here's the problem. The script never quite lets you get close enough to care deeply about who is standing up. And that's a crucial difference. Let's talk about the cast, because this is where things get genuinely complicated. Ben Kingsley is Ben Kingsley. The man is incapable of being boring. That's just a biological fact. He brings gravity to every scene he's in. That measured intensity he's been doing since Gandhi, that quality of making you feel like every word he says has been considered 3 times before he says it. And in the moments where the film gives him room to breathe, he's genuinely compelling. There's a scene, and I won't spoil the context, where he's essentially delivering a monologue about legacy and sacrifice, and it's quietly devastating. That's his scene. He owns it completely. Anthony Mackie is the interesting case here. Mackie is a legitimately great actor. We've seen what he's capable of. And in Desert Warrior, he's clearly trying. You can see the effort. But the character he's given is underwritten in a way that makes it really hard for him to fully ignite. He's asked to carry emotional weight that the script hasn't properly built up for him, and even someone at his level can't fake foundations that aren't there. There are flashes, moments where you see him connect to something real, but they're too brief, and the film moves on too quickly every single time. And then there's Sharlto Copley. Listen, Sharlto Copley in the right role is absolutely magnetic. He was extraordinary in District 9. He can do unhinged and complicated and physically intense like almost nobody else working today. In Desert Warrior, he feels misaligned. It's like watching someone play a guitar with the wrong tuning. The technique is there, the skill is visible, but something fundamental is just off. I don't entirely blame him. I think this is a character and direction problem more than a performance problem. But it is noticeable, and it pulls you out when the film can least afford it. Okay, here's where I have to be genuinely fair, because Desert Warrior is, in moments, a visually stunning film. The desert cinematography is legitimately beautiful. There are wide shots in this movie that look like oil paintings. The way the light hits the sand in the golden hour, the way silhouettes move across dunes, the textured, ancient feel of the environments. This is world-class visual filmmaking in those moments. Whoever was behind the camera understood that this landscape is itself a character, and they treated it accordingly. There's a sequence, roughly in the second act, where a group of riders crosses a salt flat at dawn, and the color palette is this extraordinary blend of pale blue and amber, and it's just gorgeous. Completely gorgeous. And you feel, in that moment, exactly the kind of epic cinema this film was reaching for. If the rest of the movie matched those visual highs, we'd be having a completely different conversation. But here's where I have to be honest, and this is the hardest part to talk about, because it's so clearly where the 4 years of production struggle show up most visibly. The editing is inconsistent in ways that genuinely hurt the film. There are sequences that feel rushed, where emotional beats that needed space to land are cut away from too quickly, like the editor was nervous about testing the audience's patience. And then there are other sections that drag, where scenes extend past their natural endpoint and the energy just bleeds out. Good editing is invisible. When editing is done right, you don't think about it. You're just inside the story. Desert Warrior's editing keeps pulling you outside the story. It keeps reminding you you're watching a film, and not always in the intentional, artistic way. The action scenes are a mixed bag. Some of them have genuine kinetic energy. There's a mid-film skirmish that's choreographed with real clarity and physical weight, and it works. But other sequences suffer from the chaotic, overcut style that has plagued action filmmaking for years, where you can feel something exciting is happening, but you can't quite see it, because the camera is moving too aggressively and the cuts are coming too fast. In a film about ancient desert warfare, you want to feel the scale. You want geography. You want to understand where people are relative to each other. And Desert Warrior doesn't always give you that. Which brings us to the climax. The Battle of Dhi Qar. This should be the movie's crown jewel. This is the moment everything has been building toward. The tactical genius, the tribal unity, the Persian forces meeting unexpected resistance. Historically, this battle is fascinating. It's the moment Arabian tribes demonstrate that Persian imperial power has limits. It's a turning point story, and Desert Warrior's version of this battle has moments of real impact. There are images in the sequence that are genuinely arresting. The scale of the opposing forces, the desert terrain being used tactically, a handful of individual moments that feel heroic in the real sense of the word. The sound design in this sequence is probably the film's strongest. It's immersive and brutal in the way that ancient warfare should feel. But after everything that came before it, after all the investment of story and character that should have accumulated, the emotional payoff isn't quite where it needs to be. You watch it, you appreciate it technically, but that gut punch, that release of 2 hours of tension, it doesn't fully arrive. And in an epic film, that climax is everything. That's what you came for. And when it's almost but not quite there, the almost is harder to forgive than if it had missed completely. So what do we do with Desert Warrior? It's not a bad film. I want to be really clear about that. It is not a bad film. It's a compromised film. There's a meaningful difference. A bad film doesn't have those stunning visual sequences. A bad film doesn't have Ben Kingsley delivering a monologue that genuinely moves you. A bad film doesn't carry this much weight of genuine intention and cultural ambition. Desert Warrior is a film that was reaching for something extraordinary and landed somewhere in the territory of interesting but uneven. And that, honestly, is its own kind of tragedy. Because the potential here was enormous. The story deserved better execution. The history being told deserves to be told well. And the ambition of what Saudi cinema is trying to build deserves a stronger first statement than this. Here's the thought I keep coming back to, and I'll leave you with this. The greatest mirages are the ones that look exactly like the real thing right up until you reach for them. Desert Warrior shimmers like the epic it was meant to be. The sand is real, the sun is real, the history is real, but somewhere in the journey from vision to screen, the water vanished. Maybe the next one gets there. I really hope it does.